Well, I'm going to start this video off with an apology. I know I never said this out loud, but I thought Brentford were going to have an absolutely terrible season. I thought this was going to be the season that would finally see them jump back down into the Championship. Just with a few things, I thought the way they played last season, they were very much on the decline. A strong start gave them the cushion to stay in the league, that and some poor performances from teams below them. And going into the summer where the business wasn't inspiring, I think it's fair to say, losing Tony, it did just look like there was many things culminating in the end. Boy, was I wrong. Now, as much as the business hasn't been prevalent, they haven't signed a bunch of players that make me think, oh yeah, that'll keep them in the division easy. They've signed that, I believe, is it Igor Thiago, who is the Tony replacement, but will be injured for the first few months of the season. Fabio Carvalho and Sepp Vandenberg from Liverpool are two relatively unknown signings. Vandenberg a little bit more so than Carvalho, but players that are relatively untested as well at this level. Carvalho having to earn his place in the Championship to then earn this move to Brentford. Vandenberg we haven't seen anything of, so it was hard to judge. But the thing that's really lifted this Brentford team up that I definitely did not give enough credit to is Thomas Frank. Now, his adaptation into this season, evolving Brentford into the next phase, this next version of the team that he's going to create, has been excellent. Obviously, 7 games in, and anything can happen in the season, but I feel confident in saying now they're not going to get relegated. I don't even really feel like they'll be in a relegation battle. And Burmo has stepped up into that sort of Tony-like presence, in terms of being the talisman for the team, the attacking force that can go and win you games. I think he's been absolutely fantastic so far, playing with a real sense of arrogance about him. Just the strong foundation that's still created is a testament to the work that Thomas Frank has done. We're going to go over this game against Wolves that happened on Saturday, which was an absolutely wild game. 3-2 in the first 30 minutes or whatever it was. Just added up to being an absolute chaotic experience, but a fun game to watch, a really fun game to watch. We'll start off with the Brentford attacking shape. Now, Brentford will look to build up in a slightly asymmetric 2-4-4, which we'll go over in a little bit more detail in a second, and Wolves would press high to combat that. They go man for man. Grant Larson, I believe, was being tasked with going in between the centre-backs. We'll cover that in a bit more detail in a second. Forbes pushed onto Asia. Then you'd get Cunha tracking Vandenberg, Gomez and Lamina on Nurgaard, and Yanel, who were playing the 2 deeper midfielders. Andre on Damsgaard, who was the 10, 8 Nori on Mbermo, Semedo on Lewis Potter, and Dawson and Totti managing Sharda. Now, where Brentford used this to their advantage is Strand Larson, I believe, was used to shadow the one centre-back while maybe going in to press the other, like he would go between Pinnock and Collins, with the idea that they were going to be sort of within the width of the box or maybe just on the outskirts. They were not, for a number of reasons. So they split very wide, as you can see by this picture here. Collins has basically taken up a right-back position. Pinnock is exactly where you'd expect him to be. And Flecken would get involved as the link between the two, offering that quick, easy outlay from side to side if Pinnock was started on the ball. So Strand Larson couldn't really get close to Collins in the time that it would take Brentford to pass it over to that side. He was completely free at right back. He was left as a spare man for whatever reason within this Brentford shape. And the domino of the Wolves press fell instantly from this position. So Collins was free man. You'd get reactions from certain players. And as I say, I described it as dominoes. One would make the move, another player would recover, and every player that recovered after that just seemingly was falling into a Brentford trap, just kind of getting caught in between 2 men, allowing the pass to go into the man he was supposed to be previously marking, and you just got a bunch of players then caught in between 2 reacting, and it just becomes a mess. So as Collins would get on the ball here, João Gomez would look to come across from Norgard onto him, then you get Lamina coming across from Janelle onto Norgard himself. But the problem is there was a real lack of intensity and a real lack of quick movement to get in between players from the Wolves players. So in the time that Gomez has made that movement or made the decision to make that movement, Collins could pop this pass into Norgard. Lamina's then reacting a bit too late. Norgard can either play forward or play into Janelle, who's got a lot more time and space to be able to drive the ball forward and get it up the pitch quicker. So they could originally break that Wolves shape pretty quickly in the build-up phase. Norgard could play forward. You'd get Vandenberg moving forward either inside or outside of Mbermo. Typically, it would be a little bit more outside, dragging Cunha with him, who did track him really well. And in this area, you'd get Damsgaard as the 10, and then you'd get Mbermo dropping into this position, who would look to drag 8 Nori with him. But again, the confusion that Wolves had between players, and this is considerably down to the quality of Thomas Frank, because the timing of these movements were always spot on from Brentford. They always did it at the right moment to cause confusion within the Wolves players. So Mbeumo dropping in caused Aït-Nouri to have to manoeuvre between, does he go and press Mbeumo on the ball, or does he maybe stay in a little bit deeper to track the run of Vandenberg and maybe allow Cunha to stay a bit higher up the pitch? So he's caught in between the two, not really getting near either, and Mbeumo was then allowed to come and collect the ball in these deeper stages with a bit of space. That would then cause Andre in these positions to have to come across to Mbeumo, leaving Damsgaard free, and then Mbeumo could play through to him. There was always a pass on, there was always a Wolves player caught in between two from that original point of getting the ball to Collins. They never reacted well to this Wolves. And Damsgaard getting in this position is where the creativity really started and really took shape into the quality of the Brentford attack. I'll just move the team further up the field to demonstrate this. The Damsgaard getting the ball here would cause indecision within that Wolverhampton Wanderers defence. And the main reason would be with Nelson Semedo. Now, Nelson Semedo would get dragged in narrow as Craig Dawson and Totti were looking to occupy Schade, prevent there from being an easy ball from Damsgaard into him. Schade did a really good job as well of shifting over to that left-hand side for Wolves, that right-hand side for Brentford to bring him over further. I feel like he was really intelligent with his movement. He didn't really get on the ball a whole lot, Schade, but what he did off the ball, I feel like contributed greatly to the Brentford play and the space they were able to open up. It's not something that will get a lot of notice. It's not something people talk about, but a selfless role like that from a striker, you have to give a lot of credit to. And so Semedo would then get caught in between staying out wide with Lewis Potter or coming into Damsgaard. And Lewis Potter would stay very wide, very, very wide, stick to the touchline on that left-hand side. And Damsgaard was able to find these passes time and time again for Lewis Potter to get on the ball and get some crosses into mix of success. He was a little bit erratic with his delivery, and Semedo would then get caught reacting where he'd have to come across and try and help out. He'd sometimes get the overlapping run of Asia to cause more indecision in that Wolves back line. And it was the two wings that really caused the most issues. So Damsgaard, as I was saying before, could come across into this right-hand side and help overload it, not just play it to Lewis Potter, could play in between the lines with Schade, with Mbeumo, with Vandenberg. And with Mbeumo's form, as I was speaking about earlier, if he got the ball on this right-hand side faced up with Aït-Nouri one-on-one, this could have been dangerous at points for Wolves. And the reason for that was a run from Norgard or whoever making runs past him, whether that's on the outside or inverted, causing Aït-Nouri to get caught in between tracking the run and staying with Mbeumo, would get caught in between the two as Cunha or whoever would struggle to come across and help cover him. And he was left on a 2-on-1 situation a lot, as Wolves were throughout this game. And then Mbeumo could get the crossway, or he could look for the run of Damsgaard. And Damsgaard, I thought, did a fantastic job of timing his movements into this area after the overload had already started, without the threat of being marked, because Andre wasn't really going to chase him into these positions with the threat of the players inside in Vandenberg and Schade. So Damsgaard could come into this area and receive the ball, again, either on the inside or on the outside, depending on where Mbeumo was at that time. And so they carved him open on the left and on the right through overloads that started on the right and using the technical quality of Damsgaard to play through either side. And this is the best game I've ever seen Damsgaard have for Brentford. Technically superb. He found space well and he unlocked Wolves time and time again. And it wasn't just the wide areas. It felt like there was a lot more license afforded to the likes of Norgard and Janelt, who could make late runs from behind Damsgaard if he was on the ball in these positions, through the heart of that Wolves back line, dragging the defence inward, causing it to narrow up even more, creating space for someone else potentially. And Wolves just couldn't deal with the overloads in those central possessions. It even came from Nathan Collins for the first goal, who could make a late run from centre-back to get into the box and get on the end of a Damsgaard cross and score. So fantastic freedom afforded to this Brentford team. Thomas Frank gets the reputation, and it's not undeserved, of being a very pragmatic and safe manager. That this was anything but. This was exciting, this was risky and entertaining. Nothing about this Brentford team has been boring this season or defensive or pragmatic. They've been exciting, they've been thrilling. They've kept me on the edge of my seat quite a lot. And they more than deserve the 5 goals they got in this game. Could have even had more. But how did they defend? Again, reputation of a defensive low block team. Pressed and pressed high, aggressively, man to man. Wolves was man to man, slightly. This was fully man-to-man. So you'd get Schade and Damsgaard on the two centre-backs, with Norgard backing up the press onto Andre, Lewis Potter onto Semedo, and Burma onto Aït-Nouri. Then you get Janelt onto Lamina, Asia onto Forbes, Pinnock on Strand Larson, Collins on Cunha, and Vandenberg coming from right back into Gomez. Then Burma would get dragged up the field very quickly, as Aït-Nouri would look to progress up the field very quickly and very high, so that Cunha could push inside as almost like a second left-sided striker, dragging Collins in in centrally, which I think is a good move from Frank to put Collins onto Cunha. So he wasn't getting pulled out of position by Cunha making that movement inside. Sam Johnston's pretty decent on the ball, so he can hold onto it and dwell on it and wait for someone to maybe come and press him. Or he could go direct up to Strand Larsen, who's a very physical, good target man, can hold the ball up well, play with his back to goal. Ethan Pinnock is no slouch, but those two gave each other a good game in these build-ups. So they had that option, if nothing else, to progress the ball up the pitch. Gary O'Neill has done well with this Wolves side, making them both a decent build-up side and a direct passing side. And the transitional movements of Cunha and Aït-Nouri could catch Brentford out at points with those movements high and inside that would then cause the Brentford shape to transition into its more defensive state, which would bring Vandenberg back from Gomez into the more natural right-back position to cover for Mbeumo and protect any space that may or may not open up between the two. So he'd sit in like this, and Mbeumo would still have half an eye on Aït-Nouri and still track his runs. But then this would cause Nørgaard to drop back into João Gomez, and then Damsgaard would drop back onto Andre, so it left Schade in the two centre-backs. But by that point, it was safer for Brentford to sit in and leave a centre-back free. And they adjusted between the two very well. They read the situations well. They used their triggers really well. And as a result, Brentford fell back into their defensive shape. The real quality of this Brentford team, we just spoke about them being a high man-to-man pressing team. When they're in the more defensive stage, this is how it looked. Brentford would sit back in their sort of 4-4-2 mixed 5-3-2 shape. Wolves in their first half shape was a little bit, again, chaotic, adding to the nature of the game, where it was sort of a 2-diamond 4-4. So Andre would sit at the base of the midfield with Semedo pushing up into sort of right back, centre midfield position. Lamina and Gomez taking turns, alternating between that centre midfield or the left centre midfield. Aït-Nouri in the left wing position, Cunha and Strand Larsen up top, and Forbes on the right. To be fair, Cunha, I'm probably doing him no justice at all, categorising him as just a left centre forward. He could drop in and he would help overload the central areas, looking for the ball in either the left-sided half space or even the right-sided half space to help progress the ball. Him taking up these positions would cause the Brentford shape to react, and with that central overload, they would lose ground a little bit. And he could then progress play through the centre to Strand Larsen or get the ball out wide. And this is where the real danger came from Wolves, to be fair. So Cunha maybe coming into this position would cause Mbeumo to push up from right back into the right wing position, into a sort of more rightful position. And then this space opening up between Collins and Vandenberg, or on the right hand side, it would be Pinnock and Asia, because those two would have to stay central to make sure Strand Larsen was dealt with, and as well, Collins or whoever the spare man was in that situation needed to be alert for the late run of Cunha into the box, as he was definitely one to do once he sort of dragged a player out of position or used his overload presence to play the ball out wide. He would then make those runs into the box. Aït-Nouri getting the ball here, or Forbes on the right hand side, would need the underlapping or overlapping runs of players into this space to help drag a marker away and create space for them, or create space for the pass down the line. So it could be Gomez or it could be Lamina making the underlapping run on this side. On the right hand side, it would be Semedo attacking these areas that could then give Forbes or give Aït-Nouri just that extra yard or two of space, that extra second or two to get their action away. With Forbes, it would be taking on his man one-on-one, taking on Asia, and using that run of Semedo to then maybe move inside to cross from open play in this area or to get a shot away himself. Aït-Nouri would look to use this run to maybe play a 1-2 to get back down to the byline and whip a cross in with his left foot, as he's very good at doing, into the box, where Strand Larsen was a target, got a really good goal, winning the physical battle against Ethan Pinnock and adding to what wasn't really entertaining game. Cunha got a goal in the same way as well, so that was their tactic. Open up the wide areas, overload, give space and time for the crosses in, and then hit the players that are targets in the box. Now, they did adjust in the second half because of how much of a chaotic game it became and how much they were open to being hit on transition with this shape. So one change they made off the ball was that Strand Larsen would start pressing Nathan Collins to prevent that space from being opened up, to prevent players from having to come across and mark him. So that didn't get opened up anywhere near as much. They were a little bit more responsible in their shape. And instead of being this sort of diamondy shape, you'd have Dawson coming across here, Totti into his more natural left centre back position, Semedo as a right centre back. You'd get Andre and Gomez as the two deeper centre midfielders, and you'd get Lamina and Cunha as the two wide tens, with Aït-Nouri and Forbes out wide and Strand Larsen as the striker. Now, they didn't open Brentford up as much. Brentford were able to sit in their 4-4-2 shape and soak up a bit more pressure, or the 5-3-2 as Mbeumo moved back, because there wasn't a real attacking overload, but at the same time, Wolves weren't as open on the transition, so it added to a bit more of a controlled game in the second half, a bit more composure and just a bit more solidity from that Wolves team. And they did have a lot more of the ball because it felt like there was just a lot more easier patterns to build through. But by that point, Brentford were 2 goals to the good, could stay in their shape, could stay deep and compact, and they had a lot less with the ball, but they really didn't allow Wolves to get in and open them up too much, apart from a goal at the end from a set piece. By that point, they'd already scored their 5th, so it was, you could argue, just a little bit of complacency in that area in the final minute of the game. But adapted well to the shape, brilliantly soaked up the pressure, and broke away with quality when needed to get their 5th goal. Take nothing away from the performance of Thomas Frank and Brentford, adapted throughout the game, attacked with speed, attacked with pace, but also slow and methodically, shorter build-up, more direct, defended deep, pressed high, mid-block, low block. Full credit to Thomas Frank. And look, with certain managerial movements that could be happening over the next 2 weeks or even throughout the season, Thomas Frank has got to be on someone's list. I'm just saying, he has to be on someone's list. As a Manchester United fan, if Ten Hag gets sacked in this international break, which I feel like everyone kind of thinks he would be, I don't think he'd leave Brentford. But if he was to leave Brentford and there was an opportunity for him to come to United, wouldn't be upset by it. I would not be upset by it at all. But who knows what will happen? And let me know what you guys think. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you disliked it, comment down below and tell me why either way, and subscribe if you want to see more. In a bit, lads.